Referendum Ad Hoc Committee to order. So agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Ms. Dole got it posted last week, so thank you for doing that. Agenda item number 3, agenda approval. We've got a 12-point agenda for approval today, so I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
I would move to approve.
Okay, motion by Caro, second by Severson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor of that. By the way, we do have a quorum present. We have 5 of us in the room today. Mr. Unbehan has a school board meeting, so he's not here, and Mr. Turk had a lot of work obligations, and he's going to drop in if he can, but he might not be able to make it tonight. So agenda item number 4, public comments. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment to the committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. So we've got 2 sets of minutes in our folder. We've got minutes from the October 10th meeting and minutes from the November 21st meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Frank. Second by Coppernall. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. We've got approved minutes. That takes us to agenda item number 6, public education information report. So I'll do my best to walk through. I don't know how much time people usually have to review things before the meeting. If you like to do that before the meeting, you had 0 chance of that today because I sent them to MIS at about 5 o'clock, I think. So Mr. Cooey got those posted for us. So by all means, if you have any questions about anything in here or need me to move more slowly, just speak up and say that. So I only made 2 changes to the public education information report this afternoon. The first is the highway department section. So I'm just scrolling to see what page that's on. See, it's on page 15. There's quite a bit of information struck out there. And then if you scroll to page 16, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I had a meeting coming up with Clerk Kalish and with Mr. Elder at the highway department. And our main question was how much of that operating levy is going to capital right now. So these are the figures that I got from Mr. Elder. So out of their $1.6 million operating levy that they get from the property taxes, $500,000 is going to asphalt, approximately $500,000 is going to equipment, and the balance of about $660,000 is going to other costs like wages and benefits, and I'm sure other smaller capital items. So that's 60% to projects that we would consider capital and 40% going to things that we would consider non-capital. So that's a new valuable piece of information, I think, for us as we move forward, depending on what we want to do with that. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Severson.
Should there be more of an explanation on equipment, 30%, 500,000? Like, I understand that, but maybe somebody else, I'll use an example for, like, let's say somebody who lives on Cave Road. Not saying you, but doesn't understand that. They look at this and they're like, they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, $500,000 in equipment. Like, they just got all these new trucks. They have all this. They have all that. Like, what are they spending every year $500,000 on?
Sure.
Can I answer that question, Mr. Chair?
Great. That'd be great, Mr. Elder. Go ahead.
Okay, so 500,000 towards equipment. Basically, the big high dollar items are plow trucks. Plow trucks have a life expectancy rating of 5 to 6 years before they start nickel and diming the county on repairs. One plow truck is pretty much equivalent right now, put together to almost $300,000. It's quite a large investment that the county needs to stay up on. If we don't stay up on the replacement of those said vehicles, it starts really taking more out of the tax levy for the taxpayers. And also we have mowing tractors, and those are $100-some thousand piece of equipment, and multiple smaller stuff, pickups and so on and so forth. So $500,000 may seem like a large amount. You think that it may be thought that we're buying, all this high dollar piece of equipment, and we are, but it's because that's the cost of that piece of equipment to maintain the public safety out on the roads.
What's our size of our plow truck fleet?
Right now in the plow truck fleet, we have 19 active plow trucks, and we have about 4 in reserve.
Okay, so we have quite a fleet, and if we're wanting to replace them every 5 or 6 years, we probably have to replace ideally a couple every year.
We try to replace 1 to 2 every year.
There's also been, when I was on the highway committee, Mr. Chair, I think there's also a wait too, like over a year just to get a truck. Is that correct?
At current standards, yes, the wait is actually looking at about a year and a half before that new truck you ordered rolls off the assembly line. So you're waiting a year and a half just to see that truck come to life. That's before it even goes to the body build shop to have its dump body put on, to have the plow, the wing, and everything assembled. That's just the engine and frame basically assembled.
And Mr. Elder, I'm not sure if I sent you this. I know I told you I was going to send it to you, and I'm not sure if I did. But there's another community, they put all their public works equipment on one spreadsheet, and then they show what year it was last replaced, and then their schedule for when they'd like to replace it again. And for me, it was kind of helpful just to see, it is hard to think of when you're just living your own life, plowing your own driveway, or, dealing with your own tractor or your own cars, how many vehicles we have that keep 300 miles of county highways going. We've got 30 staff too. So maybe we can add a little description in here that kind of gets at what you're talking about, Mr. Severson. I think that's a good point, because I hear that too from folks. You just bought a plow truck, and so we just need to let people know how big our fleet is to maintain what we've got.
That can and will be provided.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Someone else gonna...
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, go ahead, Mr. C.
yes, I just wanted to clarify my understanding. The amount of the equipment expenditures, those capital expenditures are being funded by operating levy. What is the total amount?
The total operating levy that goes to the highway department is $1.6 million in the current budget year of 2022.
No, the total amount that is being utilized out of operating levy for capital equipment, capital expenditure.
1 million, and half of that, $500,000 is for equipment and $500,000 is for asphalt. And Mr. Langreck, if you're controlling the screen, can you scroll down to the next page that has the chart on it? Thank you.
So that, Mr. Chairman, if I may just add to my clarification.
Yep.
This is then distinctly different from the past when we funded those capital expenditures by short-term borrowing.
No, Mr. Seep, we already are using short-term borrowing to fund asphalt. The total amount of asphalt that we're buying is much more than $500,000 a year. This is just what's coming out of the operating levy.
Well, why are we, I'm sorry, I need to catch up. Why are we using operating levy to fund capital expenditures?
You've been on the county board longer than I am, and maybe you can tell me.
Well, I thought that we set a precedent of short-term borrowing for capital expenditures of all equipment, including new roads.
No, this is part of why I asked this question, because I don't know if I think what it was is Mr. Elder said, we have, when he replied to our questions or to our request for how you're going to make cuts, he said, I can cut asphalt out of my operating levy. That's how I knew we still had, and I'm sure a lot of you already knew it was in the operating levy, but that's why I asked Mr. Elder, how much is in the operating levy? We need to know that, because that is going to give us a tool potentially to make some changes, and we'll get to that later in the meeting. But
okay, but we know this, and that the purchase of asphalt and the equipment purchases are in actuality capital expenditures, right?
They are, Mr. C. Capital does not equal borrowing. Capital can be funded through borrowing. It can be funded through operating.
I understand that. I understand that.
Mr.
If
Severson, what were you
not
gonna-
funded through operating, however, then money is freed up for other things if you do it through short-term borrowing. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, we'll get to that later in the meeting. That's a really good point. I think several of us are thinking about that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one then. Just go to the very end of the document. This is, I hope everyone who's got a county board iPad knows it's 06A Public Education. I didn't mention that before, but the very end of the document, we've had a section on next steps. So on page 28, and the bottom of that, I added kind of a little bit of a calendar here. Mr. Caro keeps bringing this up to me. Mr. Langrek brings it up. Clerk Kalish brings it up. I had other questions, so I thought we better just get a calendar in here for our next steps. If we're going to put something on the referendum or on the ballot, a referendum on the ballot in an upcoming election, it's April. That's when it would happen. And so Mr. Kalish needs notification from the county board by the end of January. I believe the date's January 24th. Our county board meeting previous to the 24th is the 17th. So that's our last chance as a county board to make a decision about a referendum. So then working backwards then, so I'm on page 29 and kind of working backwards here. The last scheduled finance and personnel meeting before that county board meeting is January 3rd. So really we've got to have a report pretty ready to go before Christmas, because, you know, if say we met earlier in the day, finance and personnel meets at 5 p.m. We're not going to meet on Monday, January 2nd, because that's the day after New Year's, you know, so really Tuesday is our last chance, and they meet at 5 p.m. So if we wanted to finalize a report that day and not mess with our holidays, we could do it on Tuesday, January 3rd, if enough of us can get together for a quorum. Okay. So then backing up further at the bottom of page 28, let's see, this is the 5th. Next week is the 12th. The week following is the 19th. So the full week before Christmas, the 19th through the 23rd, that's when we really got a chance to take a look at a draft report that has a question in it with cost estimates. You know, we might need to have some unanswered questions. So that's really when we'd be putting that together. And then last meeting, we approved this idea of a survey, like with a few questions as a framework. And so our only chance to get to the county board is on the 13th of December. So if we meet again next week, next Monday, which I can't remember if we had talked about at our last meeting or not, but we could finalize that survey and then it could go to the county board the next day. So I've got a draft survey later that we'll go through in the meeting so that we can start looking at that, but sketching it out, tight time frame, but it's possible. We can do it if we keep working hard like we have been.
Mr. Chairman, are you saying that by January 3rd, we have to have a draft or a draft of the narrative of the contents of the referendum that's going to be published?
This committee that we're on, yes. Yes.
Pretty short notice.
It's been presented the whole time, so.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the schedule. Does anyone have any things they would like to suggest changing about this schedule? Who's on the committee?
23rd, we don't work.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Mr. Cooey from MIS just told me that folks are not working on the 23rd. I would love not to do anything on the 23rd either. I just put that whole week because I didn't want to commit us to a meeting date.
Yep.
So I didn't mean that we'd be meeting on the 23rd necessarily, but sometime in that week.
There may be a possibility that we need to meet multiple times prior to your time schedule here, and I would be in favor of that, but we want to do it right, so like, if we need to meet more, we need to meet more.
We've got a little time in that. So I'm thinking 3 meetings between now and January 23rd, not including tonight's minimum.
Well,
You know,
we gotta
but-
find out what tonight's gonna hold though yet. We don't know yet on our responses, so.
Okay.
That may garner another questions asked that we already asked, may present more questions, and then we'll have to go back to that committee, you know?
I think, and I wasn't trying to say in this schedule the number of meetings necessarily, but that bottom row at the bottom of page 28, it says draft report reviewed by referendum ad hoc committee. We might want to meet twice to review it. We could potentially do that. So this schedule isn't to say we're only meeting 3 times. It's just kind of giving rough steps. And
Mr.
rough
Chair?
dates. Yes, Mr. Carroll.
Maybe just so that it's clear to everyone, since Mr. C pointed this out, is that draft report and potential referendum wording, just so they understand, it's not just a report, it would be the draft referendum needs to be defined by that point, by the 3rd, right?
Yeah, it
Just to add that wording might help everyone realize that's what part of the report is.
Sure, and we can add that wording if you all would like. There are more components beyond just the question, though. There's the amount, there's the consequences of a failed referendum. So the resolution that formed this committee gives us our marching orders, and everything's got to be in the report from that referendum. So certainly we could add question, but I was thinking we got to do it all in that report. So does anyone want to propose any changes to any of this? Okay, well, let's just go ahead and let's see here. It's in the cover sheet for item number 6. I'm just looking for a motion to adopt the updated public education information report to use in communicating with folks.
This is Bob, also move.
Okay, motion by Frank,
I'll second that.
second by Carol. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So we have an updated version 6. Get on to version 7 next time, I'm sure. Think of other things to put in there. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 7, correspondence from committees. So we had, and there was stuff coming in today even, so I was just taking things as they were coming in and I pulled all the documents, each committee's into one PDF. So hopefully it doesn't get too confusing. Some things were sent to us in emails, so I tried to get those in Word documents and just pull it all into different, into 4 distinct documents. So land and zoning, public safety, public works, and the Richland Economic Development Board all sent responses back. I don't have any proposed action here. I was able to skim through them as they were coming in. But I don't know that you all have had a chance, and I can certainly hit highlights if you'd like me to.
Mr. Chair, if you notice anything that would require one more iteration, I guess we need to know about that. Otherwise, we can read it whenever.
We're going to have a lot more of these coming in. So if we meet again next week, you've got some time to digest these for, and we could always come up with additional questions. But honestly, we're not necessarily going to have a lot of time we might have to reach out directly to department heads or individuals to get some of this stuff. Not everything's going to be able to go through a committee with our timeline that we're dealing with. But I didn't see any major red flags. I mean, any questions I have, I think I could say, Mr. Bindle, can you share with me the septic fees from other counties so I could take a look at those to see that we're in the middle of the pack? Or if I think if any of us have questions like that, we can
I don't like that. $50 for every 3 years for that. I mean, like, come on. Not
I'm
even
sorry,
for
I
the
can't
here.
hear Mr. Bindle.
Mr. Severson, go ahead.
I just was complaining, this is Mr. Severson there, Mr. Seep. I just was complaining about the septic fee increase charge from $25 to 50 every 3 years. Is like, we're not in it to make money here off of people's septic tanks. We're in it to have, the purpose of it is to make sure that it's not cracked and leaking, that it's functional and not gonna really contaminate our drinking water. So I don't think we need to fine people for having that inspected. I know it's a way to generate revenue, and we're looking for revenue. I mean, we're already getting their tax dollars. Why are we gonna get them more?
I was assuming the intention of the fee is to cover some of our staffing costs. I would think that, I guess
Well,
the reason I brought that up is
We're
an
paying them
example.
regardless of being here.
I brought up that example because to double the fees all at once, I can see trying to keep up with our expenses,
Sure.
but to do 100% increase, I was maybe going to follow up with some folks and ask about that. But if we
That-
want to as a committee, let's
But
do
that's
it.
my opinion though, versus what, I'm just one thing, but. it's
Mr.
just-
Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
Yep, go ahead.
if I might add my opinion in concurrence with Mr. Stevenson, I believe it's entirely inappropriate for us to burden those taxpayers who have septic systems with another higher tax. First of all, we're asking them, if we put out a referendum, we're asking them to increase their tax levy. Now that we're putting a tax upon a tax by putting another fee on, which is a tax, the whole purpose of this septic ordinance and the state statutes in terms of mandating septic systems and bringing them up to code was to improve our water quality, groundwater and surface water, because so many septic systems were failed and were spilling septic over the ground and seepage into the groundwater.
Okay, Mr. C.
I think it's
I don't want us
I
to
think
get
it's
too
wrong,
far.
and
I don't want us to
think
get too up, excuse me, I don't want to get too far afield in the purpose of our
all right. I just think it's
inspection
wrong,
program.
and I think it's a penalty, and I think it's a slap in the face to the taxpayers.
Okay, so let's look at that in the context of everything else. And we're going to be doing that later in the meeting.
Happy to do that.
So it's easy for any of us to advocate for our pet thing. We all have pet things.
Well, it's not my
So,
pet thing.
I have pet things too. So let's make sure we're looking at in the greater context. So especially when we get to agenda item number 10 under county board survey, we can figure out how do we get the opinion of the county board about the septic fee increase if we want to separate it out. So we'll have that discussion as we get further on.
I object to being referred to as a pet thing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yep, Mr. Carroll. go
Yeah.
ahead.
regarding the land zoning response, I guess the only thing I was curious about was whether we think we may learn what the GIS contract savings may be in time for it to be accounted for.
Yes, and let's see, they told us that they were unable to predict the savings at this time because the RFP is currently being written. So you're wondering, what is the timing for that?
Right.
Maybe what folks could do is between now and next Monday's meeting, if you go through these and you have specific questions, assuming we're not going to go through them and generate questions for all 4 of these today, send them to me for next time and I'll put them into one document if we want to adopt them as a committee, or do some homework, reach out to, different folks. If you can get the answer to a question, then provide that answer to us next time at our next meeting. Does that sound like an okay approach?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have public safety. That's our next document. It's a 7-page document. I did read through this. They have a lot of information in here for us. One thing that jumped out to me is the register and probate position. It sounds like if we're able to keep that position, the clerk of courts can bring in additional revenues, and she gave us some dollar amounts there. I really appreciate all the time that the department heads took to write these answers out. I learned a lot by reading these. So, Mr. Frank?
So yeah, in reference to that, from the public safety side, cutting that position means that you're also cutting the revenue that can be brought in, because they will not have the staff then to do the work to bring that in. They'll have to go to the required minimum work they have to do for the courts, and collecting of the fees and going after it is going to fall lower on the level. So I want to make sure that that's identified in there. It kind of sounded what you said, that there'd be extra revenue if this person is kept. And yes, that's true, only because if that person's kept, then they can be able to recover the revenue. I don't want to say there's going to be extra just because that person is currently kept, but we won't be losing the revenue. Is that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. And it was clerk of court Kleist said $30,000 to $50,000 potential for additional revenue if we keep that position. She put a dollar amount on it in here, so that was helpful to see, because we need to know that if we cut the position, we lose that and potentially other revenue. If we keep the position, we're able to bring in 30 to 50,000 more. So it's, would we save that much by cutting the position? Probably not, if they're going to be able to bring in that much additional revenue. It's not like we're just going to, we have to think about the big picture, I think is. So that's public safety. If anyone else has anything there? Oh yeah, Mr. Severson?
What's your opinion on your question about housing inmates outside of Richland County? That answer that good?
What page was that on?
On the public safety one, probably 5, 6. 6.
I read through it quickly. I was kind of feeling like I trust them. I don't totally understand it myself. It would take me more time to really ask some follow-up questions, but I appreciate seeing some numbers. That's what helped me.
Well, you shouldn't really, I'm gonna mention that you just don't look at the numbers, because it says in the statute that the sheriff is responsible, is to take charge. Or I shouldn't use that, is to keep the persons in the jail personally or by a deputy or jailer. So like, he has to do that. And like in the 1800s, the sheriff and his wife and family lived here in the jail and took care of them. I don't think we want to go to that, but that'll cost even more. But what I'm saying is that like, we have to do that. Like, we can't house them out. So whatever that dollar amount is, it'll be a lot, but like, we have to do that. That's our responsibility. And then in extreme circumstances, like where we need to house them, he's probably asking the other sheriffs like, hey, could you take our inmate because of this, because of that? And they're like, hey, sure. It's like, this is like a core service that we have to provide.
I heard Supervisor Luck bring this up, so that's why I was asking.
Okay.
I wanted to understand, if she's chair of the Public Safety Committee, how did they get at this answer? Because I believe that she believes that it's a good idea to not ship inmates out now after going through the discussion with the sheriff. But I just wanted to make sure that, I don't know how many other people are talking about that idea, so I just wanted to make sure we had something written.
So, and I brought this up at public safety meeting also. This question has come up probably every 5 to 10 years in the public safety realm. I can't tell you how many times through my career I've heard that. We've had to go through the numbers, chunk the numbers, and every time it comes out as, by the time you transport, by the time you house, by the time you have to have some jailers here to keep people for short periods of time while you transfer them, it never was profitable to move them out. So that's the core behind that.
Thanks for that background. I think people want to know we're leaving no stone unturned, so. Okay, I'll move forward, but come back if we need to. Public Works, we got a response from MIS that's in the first page of that attachment. It's in blue text at the bottom of page 1. I don't totally understand it, so I want to follow up with Mr. Langrek about it offline. And then on the next pages, we have, this is a report from Mr. Elder, so it starts on page 2. Even though the dates say October 13th and September 6th, this is a document he updated today. So it's a current document. And this gets to it a little bit. It adds those dollar amounts in we need for those future years. He has quite a bit of background on what would the impact of cutting employees be and all that, but I think what we already know is their recommendation is to cut asphalt from their budget. So that's the thing I've been focusing on when I read this. And then with the Richland Economic Development Board, so they followed up with our questions about, was my question, you all approved it, but about the Vernon Economic Development Association. So they followed up there. It's good to know how their model works and how they do things differently over there. There's some new information in there about the city's interest in potentially taking it on if it does not pass through the referendum. I know that you can read in this email, Mr. Glassburner was disappointed that I didn't put this on the agenda for rules last week, but Mayor Todd, I was not clear on whether you all wanted it on the referendum or not. And this was the first time I had seen in writing what the city council had taken action on. At that meeting, I was being asked to put something on the agenda to basically have the county walk away from economic development as of January 1st. And I didn't think we needed a little more time. We're already funded. We funded economic development for 2023. That's in our adopted 2023 budget. So I didn't want to start a big amount of confusion at that meeting saying we're walking away from it right now when we're talking about 24 through 27. So it's good to know the city's willing to take it on, and we can think about economic development in the grand scheme of everything else. And it's nice to know that's an option, in my opinion. But
City's position is that's not what we're saying. To start the dialogue. Going forward, so we just made the decision. So how do we get this?
I'd like to see us, how we could work together on actually keeping economic development, because we need it. That's the only way we can increase our levy, is through net new construction. We need that. So I'm just concerned that while Mayor Coppernall and the current city council is in favor of this, years down the road, what are the other councils gonna think? Because it gets in my head, fresh memory, we had a person prior, city council, that eliminated that. And here we are back to square one again. But we need to keep that. It's gonna generate us more money in the end, just like tourism dollars do. We made 100 and some thousand off of our park system, the tourism. We don't have it, probably won't generate it.
yeah, and I didn't want to get everyone all in a frenzy about we're ending at January 1st, 2023. I just wanted to, let's have it in this, let's talk about it as part of the referendum. We're going to get the county board's opinion in a couple of weeks here. Where does economic development fit in to our priorities? So maybe in January, we can talk about that at this other committee, so.
That's kind of the assumption I had. Really happy to say exactly what you said, because from the city standpoint. That side of me is reason.
Okay, so those are our responses so far, from our other committees. Anything else anyone wants to say before we move on to the next agenda item on that topic? Okay, let's go to number 8, videos. So Mr. Turk he has not joined us. Okay, just wanted to see if he was there. So he sent us 2 video scripts. He sent me an email late this afternoon, and I just put the text of his email into the cover sheet, into the background. So he says, here are the scripts for highway and HHS. The HHS one has a placeholder at the end for a discussion of court-ordered placements if we want to add that. He's open to input or ideas for additions to either one of these. He's looking for what the committee wants for the intro format. I did the talking head thing just as a placeholder for the demo I did. You know, when we saw Dave's face. I'm wondering what kind of background titles and any standardized look or feel the committee might want to brand the videos.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Carroll.
let's talk about when these videos would need to roll out and whether we have time to do anything very elaborate or not.
Sure. I don't know. I don't know that we are going to have time to roll these out before we make a recommendation.
Right.
Is
I guess
that what
all
you're
I'm saying
suggesting?
is it may have to be a talking head if we need to get it out quickly, but if we have a little time, maybe we could do something a little different, but I say whatever fits in the timeline.
Yeah, I don't know. I know Dave has put quite a bit of work into these, and so, but I know he hasn't had the time to actually make some of the videos yet. He's been working on the scripts. So I think if we have feedback for him, we should just give it to him. I don't know the timeline on this, and I don't know how we're gonna merge it with, if we decide to go to referendum, how are we gonna merge that with a PR firm that is probably gonna be helping us through the counties association? So probably a future agenda item, I think. I don't know that I'm ready to talk about that when we don't even know what we're
Right.
doing yet for a referendum question.
Mr. Chair, second thing, can you refresh my memory, how many of these we thought we would want to generate, or did we even say that?
We approved a list of 8, I believe. A few meetings ago. Any thoughts on these right now?
What are we looking for this? What more direction, what direction do we need to give?
Okay, he says he's just open to general input and ideas, first of all. And then the second thing he said is he's looking for what the committee wants for the intro format. I don't quite remember what the intro format was. I remember he was talking, but I wonder if it's possible just to use photos of each topic at the beginning.
In my view, the Richland Highway Department, County Highway Department should be introed with the Highway Department and the truck and the equipment in front of a building with, let's get that visual catch right away. HHS should be the same thing. Maybe the vision's going to be each of these sections. It's going to be their building. It's going to be their department. It's going to be their sign or what they do. Ambulance service should have ambulances, lights and siren. I mean, that's the catch we have to do. We've got to do that visual catch, I think, on all these.
What about people too?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything you said, just add the workers to.
Right, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're in front of the county shop with the trucks. I mean, you got all the equipment, you got the people, you've got what are they doing? I'd love to see a big snowfall before one of these videos has to go out, so we can get a video of some of the trucks going and plowing and what they do and what they run into, and not physically, but the challenges they have in plowing and some of those.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, Mr. Carroll?
I think we could look at also some of the, public information stuff that's generated by other referendums for ideas, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. These are services that the county provides, and these are the people that do it, and just leave it at that.
Okay, so does anyone disagree with the idea of starting off with images of each department and the work that they do along with the employees? Okay, so we'll give Dave that direction then. That's what we want the intro to look like. Should we put this back on the agenda next time so you have a little more time to read the scripts in case you want to change anything? It's hard to do it on the spot, so.
I think it needs to be on our agenda, Dick, because he also may have some more scripts by then.
I don't mind it being on the agenda. Can we start working on it and getting these out? Can we start getting the video going?
Yeah, it's really on Dave's timeline. I don't know his timeline. So,
And Mr. Turk is not with us. He's not.
no, he had
Right.
work obligations today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think visual hooks, remembering on social media, for example, you've got a very short second or two to catch me while I'm scrolling. So a visual hook, to your point, to get me to stop and watch is fine with me, but the point is to look right at the camera and tell the people why you're there. I think some of this might be being overthought just a little bit. Get them out. The point is get them done, get them out, because we're sitting here talking about this stuff and we're not getting anywhere teaching the people without the videos. So go. And I'll be happy. I'll call Dave. But I mean, the visual hooks are fine, but what was that? Okay, but the point, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It just has to be accurate and done and out there, because when people are tuned in, they know we're having these meetings, they know how important all of this is in all of their lives. They want to hear it. And we're telling ourselves, and we haven't told them yet. Without the videos is kind of how the way I see this.
So Mayor Todd, can you reach out to Mr. Turk?
I'd be happy to call Mr. Turk. In fact,
Great.
I'll go down and help him produce the videos if it'll get them online.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah. Takes a lot of work to do this stuff, and a lot of us are mostly volunteering, so.
It absolutely does, and I understand Mr. Turk and everybody's desire to make sure that we're all in agreement and we know what to expect, so I understand the process, but we gotta go.
Okay, so we could just make a motion to just encourage Mr. Turk to go ahead and produce the videos without sharing any more scripts with us. And for the intros, just to use as many visuals as we discussed tonight of departments and equipment and people in front of buildings and things like that. So that's a motion to give the script authority to him and to just go ahead, that gives some little guidance about the intros and says, just go ahead.
Yeah.
He's right here.
Yes.
What are you doing?
Okay, is that a motion by Frank?
Yes, that's a motion by
Okay.
Frank to get these going.
Second.
Second by Coppernoll. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
I
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. We'll get that to Mr. Turk. I'll let you deliver that to him, Mayor Todd. That would be great.
I'd be happy to. He just lives a few blocks away. I'll get together with
It'll
him.
be
and
an
get it.
in-person
We'll
delivery
get
of
them
the
done.
committee action. Okay. Okay, so agenda item number 9, levy referendum materials from other communities. So I'll hand it off to Mr. Carroll. You did some research for us.
Yeah, I found, let's see. Well, I found the website that had all the referendums in the state that had been done by municipalities and counties, and there was one by a county, and it did not pass. But in the municipalities, the great majority did pass. What I noticed is that only a few of them were specifically for just maintaining current existing services. Most of them were for adding services, like a few extra police officers or a facility or or something like that. And again, most of them passed. There weren't very many in the list there that were very large ones. Most of them were in the 100,000, less than $1 million. There were a few that were larger than that, but in general, like I say, the people were willing to pay for added services in their municipality, and I don't know why there weren't any more county ones, but there weren't. And I just went through the ones that from this past November. We could go back in years past and look for more stuff, but I think this election gives us the best read on what's likely to happen this spring.
Thank you for doing all this research. I mean, it's amazing just to see them all in one document, everything that just happened in November. So I have not had a chance to go, hit some of the links and look at those, but thank you for doing all this research.
Well, I'll add a little more. It was actually hard to find results. The news, the media would often mention a referendum was coming up. A municipality website would say, "Hey, we're going to have a referendum," and we found examples of public education flyers and documents. But after the election, it's like the information just faded too quickly. So I couldn't find results on all of them. I found enough results to determine that most of them passed, but it was just odd that after the election, the referendum information just disappears.
So the state doesn't keep track of all the results of referendums in one spot, you're saying?
I couldn't find it. It could well be out there, and I just need to keep looking.
Is there anything you want to mention from this last page where you just had some notes?
Mostly I was where I could find that someone had created some public information flyers or information for education. This is where I tried to save some of the links so we could go look at those for examples. Some of them definitely looked like the municipality had gotten help from some company that's expert at PR. Others looked more homebrew, but there were other municipalities. I couldn't find anything, any document or anything that showed what they did for their public information. So either it was just hard to find or they didn't do much.
Okay, anyone have any questions or thoughts for Steve? Okay, well, I'll keep moving on here. Thanks again for that, and I'll be spending some time looking at some of these. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Seat.
wouldn't each municipal or county clerk have those documents on file to share? Perhaps Mr. Langrick or Mr. Kalish could answer that question better than me.
Mr. Seep, I'll answer. Yes, they probably would. It would have meant at least one phone call for every one of these referendums, and I just had not had time to chase it in that manner.
Thank you. They're the repository of record.
Okay, let's move to agenda item number 10, County Board Survey. So, cover sheet here. At the last meeting, we approved 3 questions as a framework for developing a survey for the county board. The questions were, what % increase in property taxes are county board members comfortable with? The second was, what are the priorities of the county board for funding? And the third is the county board comfortable with raising taxes through additional short-term borrowing for capital projects and court-ordered placements? So attachment 10A is just a draft that I put together this afternoon. It's definitely not a final. It was me banging out my thoughts as quick as I could before the meeting here. So this is intended to be the format that would go to each county board member. We would have 21 of these. They're 4 pages, so I guess I was thinking of like a stapled packet that goes to each county board member. on the night of the 13th. I threw out there at the beginning, return the survey to Ms. Dole by the end of the day, Thursday, December 15th. I thought some people might get angry if we asked them to fill it out the night of the county board meeting. They might want some time to think about it, but I just threw that date out there. I would rather they came back right away, and people didn't have a lot of time with them because we're going to need time to analyze them, but I was trying to balance those two things. So there's a little intro about, I thought maybe we should tell a little bit of a story of what's happened because some people on the county board have not been staying in tune with what we're doing. And well, I mean, it's hard to keep up with all these meetings, is what I mean. It's hard to follow all the details of what we're doing. I know everyone's aware of it because it's hitting their committees, but I think some people will have some very basic questions. So in this intro here, I was just trying to think, what are we gonna tell them in a simple way? Like, what are we actually trying to do here? We're trying to come up with a question. We're trying to come up with a cost estimate. We've got Administrator Langrick's 5-year financial plan. It identifies a $4.5 million gap in added expenses by 2027, mostly for wages and health insurance increases. So I went back to that public education information report to pull this information into this survey. So I just have a statement here that the gap was filled by these county board resolutions, which directed committees to identify reductions to the operating levy for county services. And then the next paragraph right above the chart on the bottom of page 1 says, we asked committees and boards to identify which reductions they would like placed on a referendum versus those they believed could be made permanent. The following chart shows permanent reductions versus those that could be placed on a referendum. So I think this chart would be replaced, but what I was visioning here was, this is the reduction that each committee's been struggling with. For example, the Health and Human Services Department has come up with, I don't know the dollar amounts. We need to figure this out. We'll need Mr. Langrick's help, maybe Ms. Dole's help too. Maybe say it's 300 grand. They're saying we don't want it put on the referendum. We can make the cut. We need to show that somehow on a chart, that some of these cuts do not need to go to referendum. And in fact, some of the reductions are already going to be incorporated. So it's going to shrink our 4.5 million down to an amount that we don't know yet. Say it's 3.5 million. Say we get $1 million in reductions. We just need to know what is the piece of the pie that we're dealing with after every committee distinguishes those two things for us. So maybe like a red section of each bar could be for the referendum, and a green section of each bar is things we don't need to worry about anymore. Permanent reductions. So it's just one intro page, and then on page 2, so I've got each of those 3 questions with more explanation and like a place where we can ask for input. Maybe this is too long of a survey. I really don't know. It's like I'm dealing with this myself, so I really need, your all's honest input on it. The first question says, first, we would like to ask you to rate your comfort level with shifting portions of the above annual expenses from the operating levy to the short-term borrowing levy. So there's a paragraph that has 3 numbers here. And it says, through the process of working with committees and departments, we learned of annual expenses and our operating levy that could be shifted to short-term borrowing. The 3 items are approximately 1 million of the $1.6 million highway department's annual operating levy is devoted to asphalt and equipment purchases. The second one, this number I just heard from Clint through Ms. Clements. We need to confirm it. Approximately $350,000 of the $2.4 million Health and Human Services Department's annual operating levy is devoted to court-ordered placements. We need a state statute in there to identify what law gives us the ability to borrow for that purpose, but I've been told it's out there. The third one is approximately, and I couldn't quite understand the the table, Mr. Langreck, that you had shown finance and personnel back in November, so I left these dollar numbers blank. But there's a dollar amount of our annual operating levy that's devoted to property and liability insurance. And then the state statute, he had that listed in the chart, so I put it here, allows counties to borrow for this purpose. So then at the bottom of this page, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least comfortable and 10 being the most comfortable, how do you feel about borrowing for the following expenses? Highway, HHS, and administration, those 3 items. So thoughts on?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
If I did not know that no county has, as of yet, done one of those moves, I would put a 10 on everything. So it might be a good idea to just point that out some way.
And we've heard that for item number 2. Have we heard that for item number 3 also? Okay, so we need to add in there your suggestion. I think that's a good idea because that might make some of us uncomfortable, and I think we should probably know that beforehand. No other county has done it. At first I thought about just saying yes, no, or I don't know. But then I thought maybe 1 to 10 would allow people to be more nuanced. I don't know how you all feel about that. Okay, I'll keep going. So second, on the 3rd page, where it starts with second, we would like to ask you to tell us what % increase in property taxes you are comfortable with. By 2027, we are projecting approximately, however, maybe it's 3.5 million, I'm making up a number here, in expenses that could be funded with a property tax increase. The current property tax levy is approximately 10.5 million. This chart illustrates some scenarios. This is the same chart that we had last 2 weeks ago. It was in the cover sheet. So a 5% increase in the levy every year would lead to an additional $2.3 million in revenue. That may cover a portion of whatever we need. 7.5%, that'd be 3.5 million. 10%, that'd be 4.8 million. I did a 2.5% one going backward. That was 1.1 million. So I don't know if this is like, to me, it was hard to lay this part out. So I was kind of confused laying this out, but I tried. So I said the total of your answer in rows 2 and 3 below must equal your answer in row 1. If their sum does not equal row 1, none of the answers will be counted. So row 1 says, what total annual % change to the property tax levy are you comfortable with? I didn't say increase because I think some people might say they want it to go down. So I left that a little vague. Row 2, of that total amount, what percentage are you comfortable with making yourself as a county board member? Or what would you vote for on an annual basis?
I think you should say it that way. What would you vote for?
Got it.
Question mark.
This is what I was struggling with. I thought about just saying, what % change are you comfortable with yourself and just leaving it at that. But then I thought our potential solution might include, say, a 2.5% increase using short-term borrowing. And it might include a 2.5% increase through an operating levy referendum. Now, what if a county board member says, well, I'm fine, I don't care if I get voted out or people, whatever, I'll just go 5% and I'm comfortable with that increase all on my own. You know, I would be comfortable making that decision on an annual basis. Another person might say, I don't really want any increase. I want the voters to decide all of that. And so that's what I was trying to do here is I was just trying to.
That's confusing.
You know.
No.
Mr. Chair, that's not how it's coming across to me. I'm not quite catching that.
What's wrong with just question one?
Just leave it at that.
I guess unless somebody's got a different opinion, like what they personally want, and I guess what their constituents want. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'd personally like more, but I think responsibly it's probably not reasonable to do that, you know? As an example.
Mr. Chair, the other thing that makes it a little hard to answer these questions is, you know, what are the implications of what can't happen if I pick a low increase, or what can happen if I choose a large increase?
So the third question. Okay. Because yeah, they're really all together, and maybe these are in the wrong order too. But okay, so third, this is on page 4. We would like to ask you to prioritize the following services. Services with top rankings will likely be funded with surpluses and additional short-term borrowing, should the county board be comfortable with additional short-term borrowing. Services with middle rankings will likely be recommended for placement on an operating levy referendum. Services with bottom rankings will likely be permanently cut. Please place an X in the third column for services you believe should be prioritized. You can mark up to 10 X's. Leave all other rows blank. We did this a few years ago with the county board for the budget, and some feedback I got from Mr. Langrek. Mr. Caro and I met with them a couple days ago to talk through some of these ideas. He said that last time some of the county board members didn't, say they could rank 20 things. So they got to use the number 1 once, the number 2 once, the number 3 once. Well, some people lost track and some of their numbers were mixed up. And so he said it was difficult. Were you part of this, Ms. Dole? Okay, so they had to make some executive decisions that maybe made them a little uncomfortable. So he was wondering if instead we could, like Mr. Frank, when we did the SWOT analysis for the comprehensive plan, we went around the room voting in here and we used stickers, and you just put stickers where your priorities were. So he was thinking maybe we could just put an X only in the priorities, and that might be a little easier to calculate the results.
So we don't know what the other blank fields are at this point under airport and between the other.
I'm just plugging things in because I know Mr. Langrek has a spreadsheet going
Okay.
right now to try to keep track of all this, but
Got it. Yeah, I like this format.
Mr. Chair,
yep, Mr. Carroll.
I know this could turn into quite a list, but I'm just worried that if it's too coarse a breakdown, it's going to make it difficult for people to really say what their desires are. So I don't know how big this might get, but we need to think about how detailed it needs to be.
Do you all have an opinion about how many rows there should be?
20.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Mr. C.
I sort of, along the lines of Mr. Carroll's remarks about it's a little difficult for a county board member to consider what percentage or what solution. I think a clear statement of the problem. First of all, the problem is a gap to fill, and then here are the recommended options for a potential solution to that problem, whether the problem is X dollars or whatever the gap is. And then one solution proposed is a percentage of increase plus or so forth would bring about Y equal to a solution to the problem. Seems to me that if we present options, recommended options, that makes it easier for a county board member to respond to it. You know, I mean, if you say to a county board member, would you be comfortable with a 5% increase? Well, he needs to know, he or she needs to know what that will produce and how that relates to solving the clear problem that we state, which is we have a gap of X dollars. That's just my concern.
Yeah, Mr. Frank just said, Mr. Seep, that's what I mentioned in the beginning.
Well, very good. Great minds think together.
So I'm kind of hearing, if I could summarize, the middle section, question 2, needs to be simplified. That's what I'm hearing.
I agree.
Totally agree.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the other question I have on this last question, the priority list. Is this gonna be the definitive decision point for what goes on the referendum and what is cut, or is this just input to our process?
I would say this is input. The definitive ending of the referendum question will be up to the county board. We can draft what we want, but in the end, it will be, they can edit, they can change, they can do what they want. So to me, this is informational and directional for what we need to do.
I agree with that too. That's the way I look at it. But it gives them an option to figure, so then we kind of know where to start honing in on what they like or thought, or the public, and then get opinion from the public on what they would support. So if they would support it.
Okay, thank you for that input. That's helpful. Good question, Steve. Let's just go around the table and I want to hear how many rows each person's comfortable with. Mr. Frank, already said 20. Who's next? I want numbers because Mr. Langreck is going to ask me, and I don't want to be the one to give him the answer without input. I'm going to pin you all down.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
I'm not sure exactly what number, but I'm comfortable with a larger number with enough breakdown that folks can differentiate a little bit. So I'm just going to throw out 40.
Okay, I'm writing this all down in a document and I might create an average, but we might not come back with that amount, but I just want to know what everyone thinks. Okay, so I got Steve down for 40, Bob down for 20. Who wants to go next?
I guess I'm gonna have a little bit of time here. I'm not gonna give you a number right now until I get some more clarification. So like on here, I see sheriff's deputies. Like, why are we putting sheriff's deputies on there? Like, when that's a service that we have to have, and we need that for public safety. Like, we need to be funding that first and foremost prior to other stuff that we're not really quote unquote mandated to have. And then what is the non-mandated services that we have? Like, what is that number? Is that 5? Is that 6? That we have? Like, we don't know what the mandated, like, we need to be covering like our core thing first. Like, so.
I guess my opinion is you make that argument to the county board and you argue that that should be the top priority of every person around the table. I've listened to those public safety meetings. I understand the discussions going on there right now,
Yeah.
but the money has to come from somewhere and we have to prioritize. I don't disagree with you that that's probably a base level service. That's probably what I'm going to rank as number 1. I don't know yet. I got to think about it, but we have to be able to, if we go down that route, everyone's really good at making arguments for their own thing. And we just need, in my opinion, we need everyone to vote and we need to see what the results of the vote are. Because it's probably a big ticket item. It's probably going to eat up any surplus that we have, and then maybe some new taxes from short-term borrowing. And this is all to accomplish wage increases and health insurance premiums. increases through 2027 for all employees at the county. That's why we're doing this. And I think sometimes people forget some of that. Like we're just trying to cut, how could we even bring this up? We're bringing it up because we can't get people pay increases because the state won't let us raise the operating levy. This is our only way to do it. So that's why I think it's got to be on the list. I would argue to keep that on the list. And maybe that's not the right way to say it. Maybe we're just going to say sheriff's department, and it'll all be in one lump. I know those road patrol deputies and keeping the current staffing levels is really important to people, and so that's why I wrote it like that. But
Well, and to me, this is a ranking of priorities at this point. This is not what's going on anywhere else. This is just a guide for us to see where the county board, what the county board members are reflecting back. And so, yeah.
So what ones won't be listed on here then?
well, I think an example. What's that?
Depends if you do 20 or 40.
Well, they all got to be on here. It's just how do we describe them?
Right.
How detailed do we get? So like the fair, you all aren't asking for that to be on the referendum. That's not going to be on here. You're talking about doing a permanent cut, permanent reduction to your operating levy allocation. So that won't be on here. Certain things will not be on here, but Simon's probably will, unless they come up with something between now and when we put the survey together next week.
Both the phones only at 1%.
Okay, Mayor Todd, do you want to go next or do you want me to go next?
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I'm gonna go in the middle. So thank you, Steve and Bob. I'll go 30.
I was gonna say that just to be that guy, but you took it from me, Sean.
You wanted me to go first. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, I think 30 or 40, don't cut it short. That's what I think. Whatever number you want to pick.
35.
Okay,
You said 30 or 40 and the average of that is 35.
that'll
So,
work.
You want to express an opinion?
I would go with a higher number just so I get a feel of like what is important to those people.
Whatever number you choose, that's what I'm trying to say too.
Right.
Don't cut yourselves off.
Well, no, we just need Mr. Langreck. Are you there?
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Is this helpful for you to hear this?
It helps build what the vision's going to be for it. At the same time, too, there might be a lot of discussion on exactly then what arrives all within one line. I know that we're trying to gauge values here and not necessarily making the decisions on what stays and what goes, but it might be a challenge to kind of separate those things for some folks.
I would say 35-ish then. I think there's going to be a couple of things that you may have to look at and go, they really can't be separated. So
Are you changing your answer?
I will change my answer to support the group.
And Mr. Severson, you said a higher number?
Yeah, I'd be around that. Would be fine with that.
35?
35, sure.
Okay.
I heard a firm 35-ish from the group.
The average is 35.
I mean, we let them decide what it is, not us saying, hey, here's 20 choices, pick what you want. Or here's 15. Because now we're kind of deciding them like what's important.
Who's them? Let them
The
decide.
county board when we're
Oh.
having the survey.
Yeah.
If we only give them 15, well, they may be more passionate. 10 of them may be more passionate about this, and then I would kind of agree with them. So there's a majority vote, and we didn't even have it on there.
So say we do 35 lines now. Say that's what we end up with next week. How many choices, before I think I said 10 choices,
Mhm.
and I guess was my list like 20 long or something?
19.
Oh, thank you. You counted. So do we want to do, say, roughly half of 35 that people get to choose, or a third, or do we want to stay with 10, or how many choices do people get?
I'll give the same response I did to the question of how many lines. But as with any group, you're going to get a diversity of opinions, and people will be passionate about their choices. So my answer, rather than a firm number, is don't cut yourselves off. Because I think the point is to debate and decide. not to limit the list, and that's your decision. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Well, sort of, except I really want a list.
Okay, all
Because
right.
I want to know what is going to be on the question.
But you should though, like, you're gonna know like which ones were top ranking versus which ones were lower ranking. No, like, well, okay, lower rankings are not that much of a priority here, so we know our focus should be on the upper.
So for example, say if, I'm just throwing out numbers because the numbers will not be accurate. It's not where we will end up, but I'm just thinking like if we end up with $1 million that the county board's comfortable of new short-term borrowing through 2027, and we've got $3.5 million worth of things we're trying to fund. The things that get top ranked, they're going to automatically get funded. They will not go to referendum with that $1 million. But say we're comfortable with another million going to referendum, that middle ranking stuff, that's what will go on the referendum. And that's what we would craft the question around. We are now describing to you what will be cut if the referendum fails with our current funding levels, and then everything below that from 2 million to 3.5 million, that's a permanent reduction. Unless, say, the state comes up with an additional $1 million to give to us for shared revenue. But then we'll have the ranking, and then we can it'll be our guide going forward.
So, I'm just talking through this, the number of X's that you can choose from. If the number is too low, you're going to get a lot of individual projects from individual people. If the number is too high, it really doesn't mean anything because everybody's going to fill in all the boxes. If there's 35 items and you give them 34 X's, doesn't make any sense. So trying to find that middle ground where enough people are going to be able to get a value and choose in a common field is going to be the goal. So I guess at that point, we're going to go to 35. I would say 15.
I was thinking half, so that's roughly in the ballpark.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'm sure there's a science to this and some statistician knows that number, but that sounds reasonable. I could go with 10 or 15.
And again, we got another meeting to talk about this, but we'll write it, we'll have a proposal at that next meeting. So then it will be, don't like the proposal, then amend it, make the argument to the group. If the group agrees, that's what we'll go with.
I would like to see that proposal at the next meeting as a trial score, have this committee just run a test through it.
Okay. Like maybe we take the survey just as and then are we gonna do and see if our averages start working out? Okay. I like that idea. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so I'm just looking, I just want to make sure we all agree on where we're headed. I'm just looking for a motion to approve the attached survey as a framework for a final survey to be considered at the next meeting of the referendum ad hoc committee. We know we got a simplified question 2. We know on the third question that it needs to be expanded. We talked about how many. Is there any other guidance I'm missing about the survey?
Expanded, then how many choices they get.
From 20 to 35, roughly.
Right, but then the X's from 10
From
to
10 to
15 is what we were talking.
15-ish.
I would so move.
Okay, motion by Frank.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Carol. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. All right, fun stuff. Future agenda items. Does anyone have any? All right, let's look at adjournment then. So can we meet next Monday at 6:30?
I'll have a fire board meeting at 6.
Okay.
Usually done before 7. It's usually pretty quick. I mean, I could come partway through one if you want. Because usually we're done in 45 minutes.
Okay. And we can't really do during the day?
On a Monday, I could.
Or you could?
On a Monday.
Okay.
I can.
We have education at 1:15. That'll be a rock.
Monday.
The 12th. Anytime, including the evening? Okay, so let's see, Mayor Todd, what about before your fire board meeting?
I could do that.
You could do that.
Mhm.
So what if we did like, say, 4 PM?
I can do that.
Okay, what about MIS? They're good? Okay, so I think I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to 4 PM on Monday, December 12th.
So moved.
Motion by Coppernall, second by Frank. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.